long as they were thinking of me.
The Marty Smith's America podcast on the ESPN app and Apple Podcasts.
Stephen A. Smith.
The Clippers, this fair-weathered stepchild that's borrowing the Staples Center when the Lakers ain't there, and all of this other stuff that everybody wants to say about them, they're formidable. They're a formidable foe. And if they got any chance at all to get two marquee players, well, LeBron and the Lakers have got to get one. Otherwise, LeBron is just here to fill seats.
The Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Talking sports. It's the Sports Huddle with Eric Sean and Jess Boland. Weekdays at 9 on SEMO ESPN. KGIR Cape Girardeau. This is a local sports center update from Southeast Missouri's ESPN Radio Network.
I'm Eric Sean. This Sports Center update is brought to you by Bertrand Law Firm. Visit TreyBertrand.com. The Kansas City Chiefs have locked up the number 1 seed in the AFC playoffs after Sunday's 35-3 win over the Oakland Raiders. Quarterback Patrick Mahomes, who's a finalist for the NFL's Most Valuable Player Award, finished with 281 yards passing and 2 more touchdowns. Mahomes now has over 5,000 passing yards and 50 TDs. The Chiefs get a first-round bye in next week's playoffs. In case you missed it over the weekend, Cape Girardeau Central won the 74th annual Southeast Missourian Christmas Basketball Tournament. It's the 3rd tournament title in the last 4 years for Coach Drew Church's squad. Central defeated 3rd-seeded Jackson 57-26. Charleston finished 3rd. Oran was the 5th-place finisher. Scott County Central won the consolation title. And the SEMO women's basketball team wrapped up non-conference play with an 80-65 win over Harris Stowe. The 5-6 Redhawks open OVC play at SIU Edwardsville on Thursday. The Redhawk men will complete a doubleheader Thursday at Edwardsville.
Get local sports updates on SEMO ESPN 1220, SEMOESPN.com, and the SEMO ESPN app.
Does having a game on the TV make a sports bar? Wings, Etc. in Cape and Jackson beg to differ. They take their sports bar status seriously. Wings, Etc. is the host of the SEMO Coaches Show every Monday from noon to 1. You can watch SEMO away games at Wings, Etc. Plus, get lunch specials and daily specials like 69-cent wings on Monday, 69-cent rib tips on Tuesday, 59-cent shrimp on Wednesday, 69-cent wings on Thursday and Friday, too. Plus, they've got free Wi-Fi and a full-service bar and craft beer. Wings, Etc. The definition of a sports bar.
In basketball, when teams meet at midcourt for the tip-off and after the game, you might see a handshake or two, but most likely a high five, a fist bump, or some other form of greeting, because the spirit of sportsmanship remains alive and well. At Bank of Advance, handshakes are a part of our way of doing business. In the spirit of true community banking, the handshake represents relationship-based, service-driven banking. It's been that way with us since 1902. Bank of Advance, where a handshake still matters. Member FDIC and Equal Housing.
And now, your ESPN Radio Network local weather forecast.
Bit of a soggy finish to our 2018. Now it looks like the bulk of the rain and the heavier rain will be early in the day. We do hold on to a chance for showers later. We may hear some thunder. We are headed up to the mid to upper 50s. Tonight, keep the clouds, overnight low 36. More clouds and sun New Year's Day, high 42 degrees. From the Weather Channel, I'm meteorologist Jeff Eno.
You're up to date with the latest weather forecast right here on the ESPN Radio Network.
This is Mike Greenberg for the best in local sports talk and play-by-play. It's SEMO ESPN.
This is Mike Golick for the best in local sports talk and play-by-play. It's SEMO ESPN.
This is a proud presentation of Mississippi River Radio Sports, the sports authority. Live in the studio. It's time for the Red Hawks Coaches Show. Live from Wings, Etc. Hear the Coaches Show each week on SEMO ESPN 1220 and 1470. And also at SEMOESPN.com and the SEMO ESPN app. Also watch the Red Hawks Coaches Show webcast live at SEMOESPN.com. Now, let's go live to Wings, Etc. for the Red Hawks Coaches Show.
Welcome in to another edition of the Red Hawks Coaches Show, live from Wings, Etc. We're in the Cape Girardeau location today, and so if you've not made plans for lunch, we have room for you over here at Wings, Etc. in Cape. And if you don't know where Wings is located, right in front of West Park Mall, they share the parking lot with Steak and Shake. So stop by, join us for lunch. We're going to be talking Red Hawk basketball with head coach Rick Ray, and an opportunity to get the Red Hawks ready for Ohio Valley Conference play, and that's going to start on Thursday. The Red Hawks will be playing at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. Red Hawks head coach Rick Ray is here, and it's obviously college basketball season, but a lot of people right now very interested in college football, and I know you fall into that category.
Yeah, it's always fun during this time to get a chance to enjoy football. As a basketball coach, obviously I love college basketball, but I enjoy watching college football more because when you start watching college basketball, you end up like taking notes on something or rewinding the clip and doing things like that, so it ends up being work in some way, shape, or form. And then you're always getting prepared for your opposing team, so you watch so much college basketball that you kind of like want to get away. So when you really want to enjoy things, you watch college football. So I just love it. I love the atmosphere. I love the environment. I love the pageantry of college football. And obviously during this time, you got the semifinals going on. You got the New Year's Six Bowls coming up. So it's really a fun time to be a fan.
University of Missouri, by the way, playing today. Now we hear the weather is really bad in Memphis right now. Sideways rain, wind, but they're supposed to kick it off at 2:45 as Mizzou takes on Oklahoma State University. They'll be playing in the Liberty Bowl, and that is in Memphis. I know a lot of people were making the trek over there. As far as college football, anybody that knows you like the University of Alabama, and they know that you coached at Clemson. You know Dabo Swinney. It's Alabama and Clemson. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's funny. We were sitting there. I was watching the games with my boys. And so Deacon, my oldest son, was born in Clemson. So he's a huge Clemson fan, so he had his stuff on. But then my youngest son, Mason, he wanted actually a Jalen Waddle Alabama jersey for Christmas.
Really?
Yes. And so he had that on watching the game. So now during this championship game, one guy's going to be having all his Clemson gear on, and the other guy's going to have his Alabama gear on. So it's going to be a little contentious, in the household there.
That's funny.
And then my wife, she grew up in Michigan, so she's a huge Michigan fan. And so it's weird when they play each other, Penn State, because she ran track at Penn State, and they play Michigan. Even though she's an alum of Penn State, she's still rooting for Michigan. So we've got some weird vibes going on in our household as far as like rooting interests.
How is it for you being an Alabama? I know you admire Nick Saban, but at the same time you've got some loyalties and allegiances to Clemson University.
Yeah, I'm always torn there. Obviously, Brad Brownell gave me an unbelievable opportunity to go there, be an assistant coach, and during that time, we had the noontime pickup basketball games, and in those noontime pickup basketball games, those guys would come over and play. So Dabo would play, some of the graduate assistants, Britt Venables would come over and play. So it was always fun. You got a chance to know those guys outside of the workplace. So I still have an affinity for some of those guys. I still talk to Woody McCorvey over there, who's a legendary coach that's helping Dabo out. So I'm always torn in that. But I'll be rooting for Clemson, but I just admire the work that, Nick Saban has done. I don't know anybody that's a coach that doesn't I don't care if you're coaching golf, tennis, what have you, that doesn't admire how he gets this team to perform at that level day in, day out over the course of years.
And, sometimes you'll see a program that can ascend to a certain level and maybe have a short run, and then at some point graduation takes its toll and they have to reload. But to keep his program at that elite level, how hard is that in college athletics?
Well, I think it's always hard when you start talking about time spans and you start talking about time periods. I think back in the day when you had guys in the 60s and the 50s where there wasn't national television, they could sustain the program because people wanted to be on TV, Alabama, Notre Dame, what have you. So those are the only teams on TV. So you had these coaches that could kind of stockpile people. But then now in this day and age where everybody's on TV, to be able to have that dominance, even what Clemson is doing, it's really hard to sustain that. And so because everybody has what they have, Texas A&M might have the best facilities in the nation. Why aren't they doing it? They're in a great fertile recruiting area. Why aren't they doing it? Texas has more money than anybody. Why aren't they doing it? So for him to be able to sustain that for such a long period of time, this old adage of it's harder to remain on top than it is to ascend and get there. And so he hasn't proven that to be the case. And then on top of that, you look at the staff turnover that he has in addition to the roster turnover every single year. So he's always got new coaches in there, and they've obviously got new players in there. So, but, you know, the one thing that you always hear that really bothers me is like, well, yeah, if I had all those 5 stars, I'd be a really good coach too. Well, part of coaching is recruiting.
Getting the 5 stars.
Yeah, you know, so like, you know, it's not a situation where like that's absent of what you're doing as a coach. You know, so to me, like people that say that, well, if I had all those 5 stars, well, he went out and recruited, you know, those 5 stars, which is part of your job. So, you know, to me, when people say that, it just falls on deaf ears because they don't understand that is part of your job title.
You mentioned Texas A&M. I think I saw the top 3 recruiting classes in the country for this upcoming season are Alabama, Texas A&M, and Clemson. I think Jimbo Fisher's going to get it going down there.
Well, you know, the crazy thing is Arkansas, I believe their record was 2-10.
Yeah.
So Arkansas was 2-10, and they've got the 20th best recruiting class or 22nd best recruiting class in the nation, which you're like, wow, that's unbelievable.
But in the SEC,
but in SEC West, and they're last. And I mean, they got the 22nd best recruiting class in the nation, but in the SEC West, they're dead last. I mean, that's how hard and competitive it is, you know, in that conference.
So as the college football season winds down, any surprise to you that Notre Dame just couldn't even compete with Clemson? I mean, all the people that are SEC honks and saying, hey, Georgia's going to score more than 3 points against Clemson. Were you surprised that Notre Dame just was completely helpless?
Well, I think there's a significant difference between Alabama, Clemson, and then everybody else. I really do believe that. But I also think Notre Dame doesn't have a stockpile of talent like Clemson and even Georgia has. You know, obviously Alabama is elite. But I think what ends up happening is if you get somebody hurt, like Dexter Lawrence got hurt or can't play for Clemson, right, and they can plug somebody in there. Maybe he's not Dexter Lawrence, but it's not a significant drop-off. When Julian Love got hurt for Notre Dame,
that was it.
I mean, number 8 came in, the kid Vaughn, and they just picked on him. I mean, they couldn't hide him. And so now you got a choice to make. Do we send double coverage over there because he can't handle these 5-star wide receivers who are 6'4" and athletic and go get it? But, I mean, when Julian Love was out, they just picked on him. And I think that's the difference between a Clemson and a Notre Dame. If they have somebody go down, Clemson can plug somebody in there who's at least doesn't get exposed like that. Notre Dame has a guy go out. And then the other part of it is when it's all said and done, I mean, Notre Dame just doesn't have those dudes. Like, they've got a really good team. They really well coached, but they don't have like a Trevor Lawrence. they don't have,
correct,
you know, like a Justin Ross or a T. Higgins. They just don't have that guy who's like a 5-star that like my son can say like, hey, man, Daddy, he's really good. You know, so to me that's the difference there. And then you talk about like even like the Oklahoma-Alabama game. I mean, it's just so different because, like, they got a couple guys who stand out, but, like, those couple guys that stand out on the offensive end, whereas Alabama has some guys that stand out, but they stand out both on the offensive end and the defensive end. Oklahoma just doesn't have anybody that stands out on the defensive end.
And you can make an argument those were the top 2 quarterbacks in college football with Kyler Murray and Tua Tagovailoa. Were you surprised that Murray won the Heisman Trophy over Tagovailoa?
No, I wasn't. I think, you know, when you look at what happened in that Georgia game, everybody was still talking about they want to see Tua do it against quality competition and against the best competition. But the bottom line was what hurt his case more than anything was Jalen Hurts coming in there and still having the opportunity to beat Georgia. And so there in people's mind, I think that said was like, hey, like Jalen Hurts did it, you know, so is it really Tua that's making a difference in this program, or is it Alabama's that good? And I think we all know that Jalen Hurts could have played the whole season and Alabama probably still would have been undefeated. It's just like when they play a team like a Georgia or a Clemson, is he elite enough to get them over those teams when the talent base is pretty even? I think when the talent base is pretty even, you need a guy like Tua. But like when you're playing everybody else, Jalen Hurts wins all those games for you.
I need to ask you, I mean, with the prevalence of transferring athletes, okay, we see it a lot in college basketball, but in respect to football, How surprised are you that Jalen Hurts did not transfer when he was not going to be the starting quarterback? Where, on the other hand, Kelly Bryant did immediately say he was transferring from Clemson. So two very similar scenarios. One guy decided he's leaving, and obviously he's coming to Mizzou now, Kelly Bryant. Jalen Hurts decided, I'm going to stay with the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, I think it's obviously two unique situations, and you don't know what's going on behind the scenes and personally. But I think there's two things that kind of happen there. One is I think that the way that Nick Saban has an affinity for Jalen Hurts, you can see, after that game where he came back and won that in Georgia, you could almost see Nick Saban tearing up about how happy he was for Jalen Hurts. So obviously they have some sort of connection. And I know a couple of people on staff there. There was obvious, they said, when Tua last year was a freshman, that people would watch him in practice, and they were trying to get Coach Saban to go in like, hey, we need to make this change. And he just wouldn't do it. But it became so apparent during that time for bowl practices, getting ready for the championship games, that, hey, Tua is really, really good. Well, they blew out Clemson, so they didn't need to make that switch. And then obviously it came down to Georgia, and now they needed to make that switch. But they said it was like eye-popping, the difference between those two during the course of the season. But, Nick Saban wouldn't do it. But I think the other thing that people don't know, and if you talk to people, Jalen Hurts thought that Dan Enos, the quarterback coach there at Alabama, had developed him so much and had done such a good job with him as development as a quarterback that he thought that there was no place in the nation that he could go and get better than staying right there at Alabama. Now, he knew he could go in and get reps and things like that, but he said, I could do that next year. So he thought so much of Dan Enos and the quarterback development and what they do there with the strength and conditioning program and what have you. He thought even by staying there and being a second-string quarterback, and he knew that he would get reps in the fourth quarter every single time because they're so good, he thought that development piece of it was so important that he wanted to stay there. So, it takes a lot of character, and for somebody not to want to be in that spotlight and look long-term, because none of these guys look long-term. They're just looking short-term, and they're more concerned about themselves than anything. But for Jalen Hurts to have, like, the foresight to sit there and say, hey, I'm going to stay here because I know this is going to make me a better quarterback, and I'll transfer the year after that, just speaks a lot about his character.
And I think Tunga Vailoa's younger brother is the next in line there, and he's already signed to go to Alabama. He's a quarterback, and many believe he'll redshirt this next year. Tua will be the quarterback, and then he might succeed his brother. I mean, looks like they got a pipeline going there.
Yeah, well, they also got the kid Paul Tyson, who's Bear Bryant's grandson.
Right.
That's coming in. That's also really highly thought of as a four-star quarterback. So both of those guys are freshmen, and both of those guys are early enrollees. There's so many this early enrollees now that guys are coming in there getting reps right now. So he's actually at bowl practice doing some of those things. So, either one of those guys is going to be a toss-up of who ends up being a successor for Tua.
What has changed, and we'll talk more basketball here in a minute, but what has changed over the course of when you first started coaching college athletes to the college athlete of 2018? How much have they changed over the years?
Well, I think this is said to me when I first got in the coaching business, when I worked for Royce Waltman at Indiana State, and I think it holds true now. I don't think it's like the most important thing that's changed, but he just said, when he started coaching, he said when you got a player in a situation and it was one-on-one, closed doors, private conversation, and you asked them what actually happened, what transpired, they would tell you the truth. He said now, the guys sit there and lie to you right to your face.
Really?
He said, like, it used to be that kids would always, in those situations, like, tell you the truth. He said now, and this was back, obviously, in the 1990s, mid-90s that I started working for him. He said that now they'll just sit there and lie to you right to your face and won't bat an eye. And so he said that's the thing he thought that changed the most as far as, like, the relationship piece of it, the trust factor, whether you can trust the kids because they get in these pressurized situations and they'll lie to you. So I think the other thing that's really changed when it's all said and done is the outside factors that come into
people
play.
Talking in the ears of the athletes.
And it's not just the people, it's social media too. There's so many different ways where guys can go get information about what people think of them. So it's now like people are getting almost like the evaluation from outside rather than inside. So it used to be like, hey, what matters to me is what my parents think of me, what the coaches around here think of me. That's it. But now people are taking evaluation of like not just what the coaches think of them, their parents, but it's the uncle, it's the cousin, it's the fan base. It's like, AAU coach. It's like people like responding to them on social media. So they're getting all of these outside influences, and now they can't stay on track. So I think the blow up of social media and all these influences outside of just those particular people, I think those are the two things that have changed the most, the fact that guys won't tell you the truth anymore, and then also the outside influences.
Do you, at Southeast Missouri State, you personally, do you have any social media boundaries for your players?
Yeah, I mean, we talk to our guys all the time. Like one of our rules, we only have 5 rules. And our second rule is don't do anything to embarrass yourself, your family, the basketball program, or the university. So obviously that covers a large scope, and one of those big things is social media, what you put on social media. And we always, guys ask like, well, what can I put, what can I not put? And I always say, like, if your grandmother read it, would she be embarrassed? And so, like,
it's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, so we always tell our guys about being smart about what they put on social media. So, we have training. We obviously follow our guys, and if we see something inappropriate, we'll bring them in and talk to them. But for the most part, our guys have been really, really good, about what they post and some of the things. We always try to make sure we're conscious of what they – and the great thing about social media also is, like, it shows you what you should not be doing. So
Sure.
we'll have some things from time to time where guys posted something like, hey, don't post this, or hey, this is an example of what not to do. So we talk to our guys about that. But the bottom line is, are you recruiting the right people? And we think we've done a really good job of like sifting through the recruits and making decisions about like who do we think is going to come in and be a good person in our environment and not embarrass, our basketball program, or not embarrass our university. And that takes a lot of vetting. And you don't know all the time. But we get credit all the time in the community. People come up to me and say, hey, I saw Gabe McLaughlin in Walmart, and he was a great kid. I saw Jonathan Dalton over at the grocery store, and he talked to my kids. He was really good. And they give me credit for that. And I always say that I can't take credit for that because I didn't raise them. Obviously, whoever raised them do a good job of raising them. But the other part of it, too, is, we're smart enough to make sure we go out and recruit those type of guys. Now, we can't just recruit those type of guys and they can't play basketball.
Right.
They got to be able to play basketball first, and then we can recruit that are good people as well, too.
So who is the primary social police or the social media policeman on the coaching staff?
Well, it's all of us that ends up following them. Obviously I'm not as savvy in that world as a head coach as some of my younger assistants. But Jeff Hanza, he follows guys. All of our assistants coaches, our graduate assistant coach, they follow guys. And if they see something, they'll make sure they address it.
And, I guess you also got to keep an eye out for the Kevin Durant burner accounts, right? They're getting burner accounts now.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, it's funny. Like when we were at Purdue, Coach Painter had this rule that the night before the game, when we're on the road, you had to turn in your cell phone.
Oh, really?
Because he didn't want guys up on their cell phone all night. So that was back when I was at Purdue, so guys were turning in their cell phones. Well, what we started to find out was guys were turning in burner cell phones, and so we had to actually physically turn them on and call them to make sure it was their actual phone. So guys were giving us bad phones or phones that had been cut off or something like that. But now with all these tablets and laptops and computers and things like that, getting them to turn in a cell phone is not stopping them being up all night on PlayStation or their iPad or some sort of tablet or Mac, whatever. So, I know he still does it, but guys are going to find a way if they really want to do it.
All right, as we get ready, excuse me, As we get ready for Ohio Valley Conference play, the Red Hawks are getting set to head to SIU Edwardsville. We'll talk about that when we come back. We're at Wings Etc. in Cape. Still time for you to stop by and join us for lunch and check out their daily half-pound lunch specials. They start at just $6.99, and all of the food and drink specials throughout the week. Mondays, their award-winning jumbo wings are just 69 cents here at Wings Etc. Quick timeout, back with Coach Ray at the Coaches Show at Wings Etc. on SEMO ESPN.
Wings Etc. in Cape and Jackson beg to differ. They take their sports bar status seriously. Wings Etc. is the host of the SEMO Coaches Show every Monday from noon to 1. You can watch SEMO away games at Wings Etc. Plus, get lunch specials and daily specials like 69-cent wings on Monday, 69-cent rib tips on Tuesday, 59-cent shrimp on Wednesday, 69-cent wings on Thursday and Friday too. Plus, they've got free Wi-Fi and a full-service bar and craft beer. Wings Etc. The definition of a sports bar.
They got a pure, like, you know what they're trying to do. They're trying to throw the ball into the post every possession. Like, they're trying to get it in. And whether those guys are good enough, they score and things like that, they have thrust, to their offense. And so you appreciate that. You got to
34 million Americans smoke. That's about 1 in 7 people. Not every smoker wants to continue using cigarettes. Juul was designed by smokers for smokers to be a satisfying alternative to cigarettes. Juul is a vapor product that contains nicotine for a satisfying transition. If you're one of the 34 million adults who smoke, know that there is an alternative to cigarettes. Make the switch at Juul.com. That's JUUL.com. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Message and data rates may apply. What if there were a top-ranked business degree that gave you access to world-renowned faculty, leaders, and mentors, but on your schedule? The W.P. Carey School of Business at Arizona State University is now accepting high-quality applicants for its online MBA, Information Management, and Business Analytics Master's programs. Learn more about the W.P. Carey business degrees online. For more information, text RANK to 79645. That's RANK to 79645.
And now, your ESPN Radio Network local weather forecast.
Bit of a soggy finish to our 2018. Now it looks like the bulk of the rain and the heavier rain will be early in the day. We do hold on to a chance for showers later. We may hear some thunder. We are headed up to the mid-upper 50s. Tonight, keep the clouds, overnight low 36. More clouds and sun New Year's Day, high 42 degrees. From the Weather Channel, I'm meteorologist Jeff Eno.
You're up to date with the latest weather forecast right here on the ESPN Radio Network.
This is Mike Greenberg for the best in local sports talk and play-by-play. It's SEMO ESPN.
Welcome back. It is the Red Hawks Coaches Show from Wings Etc. in Cape. Nice turnout today, and we certainly hope that everyone has a very safe New Year's Eve tonight. Wings Etc., a great location. If you're looking for somewhere to ring in the new year, why not make it Wings Etc.? We are here every Monday for the Red Hawks Coaches Show at 12 noon. SEMO wrapping up non-conference play with a game against Abilene Christian. That came on the 21st, so 10 days since the Red Hawks have played, and it was a 70-68 loss to Abilene Christian. And Coach Ray, anybody that has not heard of Abilene Christian, it's understandable. They played in the Southland Conference. I think when you think Southland Conference, if you follow college basketball, you've heard of Stephen F. Austin. They've made a name for themselves in that conference. But Abilene Christian looks like they may be as good or maybe just a step below Stephen F. Austin. They may be a real factor in that conference this year. I mean, they're 9-2 now.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if they don't finish either second or first in that conference race. And then obviously once you get to the conference tournament, it's anybody's game between those two. But they're a really impressive team. They do some things as far as like making sure they try to get a thrust of getting the ball into the post. And then they do some different things as far as like they're pressing and they're denying. So they make you make individual plays. And if you're not great at making individual plays versus pressure, they expose you.
Yeah, I said 9-2. That their win over you makes them 10-2. So, boy, you look at that stretch of games that you had with you play the Citadel. They're the highest scoring team in college basketball, only 2 losses. Then you play Florida State, who just ran St. Louis University out of the gym the other night. I mean, you played Florida State better than SLU did. And then you play Abilene Christian. I mean, those are 3 really good non-conference games, and those are teams. Now, obviously, Florida State's nationally ranked, but Abilene Christian and the Citadel, they're probably teams that compete very well in the Ohio Valley Conference, right?
Yeah, probably not great scheduling on our part. But Citadel, I talked to their coach after the fact, and he said, when we played them, that's the lowest three-point field goal percentage they had outside of their game against Texas, and it was only a 1% difference as far as what we did with their three-point field goal percentage defense. So he was really impressed with the way we guarded them. And if you look at how many points they're scoring per game and what they did against us, is a significant difference. But we just didn't attack their zone very well at all. And then you talk about Florida State, obviously their length and their size and athleticism and them having high major basketball players finally caught up to us. And Abilene Christian is just, we had 23 turnovers in that game. So you look at the fact that we had 23 turnovers and lost by 2 points. And not only the 23 turnovers, we had a lot of empty possessions on the offensive end besides those turnovers. So you're just not going to beat a team as good as Abilene Christian when you have that many turnovers and empty possessions on the offensive end.
That's the one thing sometimes you just kind of scratch your head and say, man, I guess that's just college basketball, because you go to the 10th ranked team in the country, you only turn it over 11 times, and then you come home against Abilene Christian and have 23 turnovers. It doesn't compute, right?
Yeah, and it's the same type of what they're trying to do. Now, obviously they're doing with a different type of personnel, but Abilene Christian is doing the same thing that Florida State is doing. They're trying to make sure that you don't get catches. They're denying everything in the half-court setting. They're not a full-court pressure basketball team like the old days of Arkansas with the 40 minutes of hell. But then the half-court, they're trying to take away catches. And then on top of that, Florida State obviously has a length and size at the rim to go and block your shot, where Abilene Christian really doesn't have that. So the fact that we went and took care of the basketball and got quality opportunities against Florida State but didn't do that against Abilene Christian, that's the thing that makes you coaches have no hair or gray hair, when they're coaching these guys. So, we've got to figure out – we got up. Our guys are excited to go out and compete against Florida State. And, we talked to our guys about the fact that you got to be able to go out and play that way regardless of who the competition is.
And I think you led Florida State for 22 minutes in the game, and I think that's more than any team. Even Villanova's the only team to beat them, and Villanova didn't lead them for 22 minutes. So, I mean, you've played Florida State as good as maybe anybody has.
Yeah, I thought really 27 minutes. I think at the 27-minute mark we were just down 4. At that point in time. So for 27 minutes, we really did a great job, but then we just had a breakdown. And once we had a breakdown, we became non-competitive because, I think the fact was, hey, now it's starting to look like it's Florida State.
Right.
But I think the potential was there. When you've got a young, inexperienced team, you got to be able to sustain that potential over 40 minutes, and that's where we got to grow.
I have heard a couple of basketball analysts that think that Florida State has the potential to be a Final Four team. Now, whether that comes to fruition or not, I don't know. But I have heard a couple of basketball analysts say, I think, he may have the makings of a Final Four contender down there.
Yeah, they got a stable of guys that can, interchangeable around the rim as far as their shot blockers. They're so-called forwards. And then they have guys in the backcourt who can make shots and create shots. And I think when you have a combination of those things and their defense, obviously, you watched their game against St. Louis. I watched the first half of it. It was just they were overwhelming in the way they defended and the way they protected the rim. And St. Louis, they struggle a little bit shooting the basketball, and so you've got to be able to make threes against Florida State when it's all said and done. If St. Louis didn't do that, but you go and you watch that and you say, man, they're really, really talented, and they'll get better as they continue to play ACC.
So Abilene Christian, the one other thing I will say, and it's no offense to Abilene Christian, they had 9 steals in the game, but you were watching the same game I was. The 23 turnovers, a lot of those were not forced turnovers by Abilene Christian. You're like, boy, that was an unforced turnover.
Right, and those are the ones that kill you. I mean, obviously, you don't want your guys to turn the ball over at all.
Sure.
But what really frustrates you is when they're unforced turnovers. And I thought a lot of our turnovers are unforced turnovers. And I think our guys, you get caught up in they're trying to do too much, or they're like not they're not paying attention to what the weak side is doing, and it just becomes a situation where they're reading too much or they're not reading enough.
So I think a lot of people want to hear you answer this question with the fact that you really, I mean, you've got Mark Leros, you've got Jonathan Dalton and Ladarius Brewer. Those are the real only guys that have Division I minutes under their belt, and Leros is a guy that comes off the bench, a good player, but, you know, he's not one of your starters. How have you gotten this much better on defense with all these new guys?
Yeah, and for people that don't understand what you're talking about, where we are defensively, we're second in the OVC in every defensive category that really matters. And what I mean by that is our scoring defense, we're second in the OVC. Field goal percentage defense, second in the OVC. Three-point field goal percentage defense, second in the OVC and top 20 in the nation. We're doing a really good job of rebounding the basketball. We're second in defensive rebounding percentage. So we're doing some really good things on the defensive end. The number one thing is buy-in from our guys. If you don't have buy-in from your guys, I don't care what you're doing on the offensive end or the defensive end, it doesn't matter. So I really applaud our guys, especially so many guys that are new to our program, understanding what they need to do every single time on the defensive end in order for us to be successful. So we've had a tremendous amount of buy-in from our guys. I think the second thing is simplifying what we do. I don't want to get too technical here, but we used to spend every single day on baseline rotation. I mean, you got to do this. And the fact that we're not giving up baseline now with this new philosophy of what we're doing defending the basketball, it's taking away 20 minutes of like what we have to do every single day in practice. So that's really helped us. But simplifying what we're trying to do on the defensive end has really helped our guys concentrate on doing the simple things really well, doing them hard, and concentrating on those little things that we talk about in order for us to be successful.
And when you have success on the defensive end like that, doesn't it give your players even more buy-in?
Yeah, well, I think everybody talks about they want a fast break. They want a fast break. And I know when I first got here, you know, the so-called team leaders came and talked to me, and they said, Coach, we want to fast break more. We want to run more. We want to have more up-tempo. And my response to them was, why don't you? You know, so I don't control that. If you want to be a fast break team, if you want to be a team that gets out and up-tempo, you got to get stops. Nobody fast breaks out of a make when the ball is made. You know, you have to get a defensive rebound. You have to get a stop, and then you can run. So I think getting stops leads to us being better in our offense. We're not very good when we're taking the ball out of the net every single time or dead ball situations, and I don't think anybody is because the defense is set. It's harder to play against a set defense than it is in team in a scramble mode after a miss. So, like, the fact that we can do some things on the defensive end allows us to be better on the offensive end. The other part of it, too, is like we've got guys now that help us on the defensive end. Sage Tolbert, Gabe McLaughlin, those guys have been huge in what we're trying to do on the defensive end because they're so active, they're so mobile, they protect the rim, they use their athleticism. If you see us defensively and the way those guys hedge the ball screen it's been phenomenal the way Isaiah Gable, Mark, Gabe, and Sage have done a great job of picking up on hedging that ball screen every single time. And then we went out and got some individual defenders who help us too. Alex Caldwell is tremendous on the ball as an individual defender. Nigel Russell is a guy that comes in and gives you a big, strong athlete in addition to Skyler in L.A. Ladarius Brewer that gives us a presence as far as like being able to guard the basketball. So it's personnel. Is better for us defensively, but it's also guys buying in.
And, you know, when you are having success on the defensive end, I talked with Drew Church, the head coach at Cape Central. They just won the Christmas tournament, and they were just amazing on defense. They held Jackson to 26 points the other night. And one of the first things that he said when he sat down, he's like, this group that I have this year loves to play defense. When you have a lot of success, does that make your players really like to play defense all that much more? I'm not going to ask you if your players love to play defense, but maybe some of them do.
Yeah, I don't know if our guys love to play defense. I don't know how many guys like.
I don't think I've ever heard a coach say that, but he said that they love to play defense.
Yeah, I think the only guys that truly love to play defense are guys that play defense in football. So like those guys love to play defense. So just a funny story is like I know when I was at Northern Illinois, we were recruiting this kid that was a really good basketball player, but he's also a really good football player. Okay. So he was a tight end. He was about 6'7", 235 pounds. So he was getting recruited as a high major tight end. His dad had played nose guard at Iowa. So he was a really good football player there, and he was torn between whether he wanted to play basketball or football. And his dad was a real quiet, stoic guy, didn't get involved in the recruiting. He'd be there but wouldn't say much. So it's kind of getting down to like, hey, you got to make a decision here. It's the spring. What do you want to do? You want to play basketball or football? And he kept going back and forth, and finally his dad said, hey, son, he said, you can do what you want to do. He says, but let me tell you something. If you want to play football, when you line up at that tight end position and you go across the middle and you got a middle linebacker and you got a safety coming up to hit you, those guys know they want to play football. So just keep that in mind as far as like your decision there. So, but yeah,
what did he end up doing?
He ended up playing basketball.
Okay.
But I just think that you've got to have some buy-in. You've got to make it fun for those guys. You've got to be competitive. We do a lot of competitive things, whether it be one-on-one or 3-on-3. We have a game called Cutthroat where you got to get 3 defensive stops in a row. You've got to have some competitive fire to it because I don't know if anybody just wants to go out, and especially like our point guards, they got to pick up 94 feet and guard all the time. Jonathan Dalton, Alex Caldwell. I don't know if that's fun, for them. But they've been tremendous as far as like doing the things we asked them to do and doing it with some energy and enthusiasm.
Speaking of Alex Caldwell, he was in concussion protocol for the Abilene Christian game. Here we are 10 days later. Thursday is your first conference game at SIU Edwardsville. Do we have an update on Alex?
Yeah, and I think he really, not having him hurt us. Because when you're playing a team that denies, you need a guy to just go by and make a play.
And there are a lot of guys that can't stay in front of Alex Caldwell.
Yes, and he has that ability just to go by and make a play. There's no offense, for that. Like, hey, man, just go by him. And he does that. But, the thing about concussion protocol now, we went home right after that game. And so when he came back from being home, he still had to go through concussion protocol because of steps that you have to do. You have to be able to jog without having a concussion or symptoms the next day. You have to be able to go on the court and do some things non-contact-wise without having a headache. So he still was in concussion protocol when he came back, even though it was 5 days removed from that. So he's back on the court. He's doing the things he needs to do. He's a little winded from the time being away from basketball between the Christmas break that we had and him not being able to play those last couple 3 days in practice. But he's back healthy and should be ready to go.
All right, so that's going to be Thursday as part of a doubleheader. The women go at 5:30. It says men at 7:30. It's impossible to start it at 7:30. More like 7:45 or 7:50 is probably when you tip it off. SIU Edwardsville, a team that has been struggling since since they joined the Ohio Valley Conference. What's the scouting report? What are you seeing from SIUE?
Yeah, well, they're a team that's always going to be difficult to play against because of the way they defend. They have long athletes around the rim and make it very difficult for you to score around the basket. It's going to be a situation for us that we've got to attack the paint, but understand that when we attack the paint, we need to get the ball outside and try to make some threes and get a second paint attack. They've got a kid named Marshall who's really good at scoring the basketball, can make threes, and they went out and recruited a couple perimeter guys that's going to make them better around the perimeter. I think SIUE's struggle had always been scoring in the past, but I think they really went out and recruited some guys that's going to help them in that regard of being able to score the basketball. They have a little token press. where they're not really trying to steal the ball. It's like they get a turnover if you turn it over.
Right.
They don't force a turnover. And they've got a little bit of a 3-2 zone that we've got to be prepared to go against. But at the end of the day, it's going to be about us being able to defend and rebound against some of their size, then also having the ability to finish at the rim or make good decisions at the rim.
In terms of rebounding margin right now, they're right there, middle of the pack, a +1 in rebounding margin. The one thing, their points might be up just a little bit, Coach. They're averaging 74 points per game, and that's kind of middle of the pack as well.
Yeah, and they used to be always toward the bottom
right
in that, and so they've really done a good job of going out, not just like recruiting some guys who can shoot the basketball for them, because that was always a problem for them in the past. They had some good players, but they struggled shooting the basketball. I think they went out and recruited some guys that can shoot, and I think they've kind of opened up. They were more of a set play team. But they've kind of opened things up a little bit more in order to give their guys a little bit more freedom on the offensive end.
And I think it depends on who the head coach is and how recruiting goes, obviously the lifeblood of a program. But how much of an advantage is it for a school like SIUE or like Belmont that they don't have to fund football and they can funnel some more money and some more attention into the basketball program?
Yeah, if you look at some of the powers, especially like in the Big East, when that conference was a whole intact, teams like Creighton that doesn't have football, they put everything into it. Xavier is another prime example of that. Wichita State is an example of that, where they funnel everything into a particular sport because they don't have that. But, I don't know. Belmont is not just because of football, but it's also a private institute. So that makes a difference as well, too. But SIUE, not just that, but they're also close to St. Louis, where they can go in there and kind of tap into some of that talent as well, too.
All right. And it kind of helps if you have a Hall of Fame coach at Belmont, too. I mean, how good is Rick Byrd, seriously? I mean, he's just sustained it for so long, and, the wins just keep piling up. His system clearly works. How good is Rick Byrd?
Well, I think the thing that stands out to me about him is he is steadfast on the type of player he's going to recruit. He's done it during his whole tenure. You have to be a skilled basketball player with a high IQ in order for him to recruit you. If you're not that, he's just not wavering on that. He's not taking a guy who's just an athlete. He's not taking a guy who doesn't understand the game of basketball, who doesn't make good decisions. Hey, now he's in a situation because he's at Belmont that they're a little different. They're right there in Nashville, so they can tap into a whole bunch of different areas. But also because it's a private institution that he can kind of pick and choose some guys there. Then obviously now that he's had so much success, people want to come there because he can point to, hey, we've done this, we've done that. But at the end of the day, I think the philosophy that he has of recruiting and the fact that he's stuck with it through thick and thin has really helped him.
Belmont goes on the road and beats UCLA. Liberty beats UCLA, and apparently, according to ESPN, I don't know if UCLA has confirmed it, but apparently Steve Alford has lost his job at UCLA. Boy, the pressures when you are an elite program like that. No one is ever going to live up to the standards that John Wooden, established at UCLA. It's a totally different game now. It's a totally different playing field. And Jim Herrick, won a national championship there. But when you talk about elite schools like that, boy, the pressure on a head coach is a whole different level, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think what happens is UCLA also has got to start to understand who they are. Ben Howland was there and was taking them to multiple Final Fours.
I think he went to 3 Final Fours.
They fired him after winning the conference championship and getting into the NCAA tournament. And so at some point in time, you've got to figure out, are your standards too high at a school like a UCLA? And if you look at some of the things behind the scene that most of the common fan doesn't realize about the Pac-12 conference or UCLA, first of all, UCLA attendance is really bad. There's so many different things going on in Los Angeles that one of the last things people want to do is go to a UCLA basketball game. So you've got that dynamic where you got teams like Kansas, North Carolina, Xavier, Creighton that just sell out all the time, Louisville that can use that in their recruiting, okay? The next thing is the Pac-12 doesn't take charter jets. Everybody else. No, Pac-12 is you go to an airport when you play a game. So when you play a swing of playing Arizona State, you're doing it on a commercial flight. When you go play Oregon State, you're doing it on a commercial flight. When they go recruiting, those head coaches are not hopping on a private plane. So they're at a distinct disadvantage against the schools in the SEC, the schools in the Big 10, Big 12, who are like using private jets to go recruiting, and they're also using charter jets to take their teams to go play their rivals. So those are things that people don't think about, and I think the Pac-12 as a whole has to look at that. But UCLA now, when they're recruiting against, a Kansas, when they're recruiting against another team, they've got to look at some of those things. Okay, where are we really at in the so-called like pecking order of college basketball?
That's kind of hard to believe the Pac-12 would have that rule against charter jets. And right now, I mean, I'm sure you follow college basketball closely. The Pac-12 is as down as it has been in a long time. I mean, that's one of the talks of college basketball is how bad the Pac-12 is. It may be because of the charter jets.
Yeah, it could be a whole bunch of different things. Obviously, there's always different factors that go into it. But I think when you always have to look at where you are compared to everybody else. So when you want to start to complain about some things, okay, it always boils down to look at what's happening in the funding. I'll tell you a story. When I was I'm not going to say his name, but he was the head coach at Ball State. And so they just got a new athletic director, and they also got a new president, and they came from the West Coast. And so their deal is like, hey, I want us to be the Gonzaga of the Midwest. A really good mid-major program that continues to win. And if you can't get it done here in this first year, we're going to fire you. And so, obviously now this guy's on high alert. Because Gonzaga, so what he did was he went and he got all of Gonzaga's budgets for basketball. He got like what they get, what they pay the assistants, what they pay the head coach, the charter jets they have access to, what they pay, like everything they do budget-wise. And he went and got all the information. And he had it compared to Ball State's. And he said, hey, I know you guys came at me strong, and I'm on board now. I understand what you guys want at Gonzaga, and I want the same thing. They said, that's great to hear. He says, here's Gonzaga's budget, and here's our budget. Let's do it. Let's get on board. Let's be the Gonzaga of the Midwest. And they were like, whoa,
that's
wait.
It's such a smart thing to do because the budgets they're probably not even in the same stratosphere.
Yeah, they don't take a charter jet the whole year. They don't have access to a private plane. So, to me, when you start talking about what you want to be, it always starts behind the scene as far as like to support it. And if you don't have the support there, you're not going to be a Gonzaga of the Midwest until you like fund that the same way.
Funny you say that because in 2010 when the SEMO football team made the playoffs, they played at Eastern Washington. Well, that's in Cheney, Washington. We flew into Spokane after the playoff game, and we're going to fly back. We had a long delay because the Gonzaga basketball team was waiting on their charter, and so we had to wait on Gonzaga's charter, and then we were able to get on our charter and fly back from Washington. So we got to see the Gonzaga charter up close. Let's take a timeout here with Coach Rick Ray. Final segment on the Red Hawks Coaches Show from Wings, etc. in Cape. After this on SEMO ESPN.
Radio Deals half-price deal of the week. We're off to TJ's Burgers, Wings, and Pizza in Jackson. We have a $25 certificate. Good at TJ's Burgers, Wings, and Pizza. It's yours for half price, $12.50. These will fly out the door. You'll have to be quick. They go on sale exactly 10 a.m. this Thursday morning online at riverradiodeals.com. That's riverradiodeals.com.
The skills you can develop as a soldier in the Army National Guard can give you an edge in the high-tech job market of tomorrow. The Guard offers career training to take advantage of your skills in science, technology, engineering, and math that can help give you a leg up to a high-paying and rewarding STEM profession. Get a head start on your career while earning money to pay for college. Log on to NationalGuard.com to learn about all of the STEM career opportunities in the Army National Guard.
Sponsored by the Missouri Army National Guard. Aired by the Missouri Broadcasters Association and this
Now, your ESPN Radio Network local weather forecast.
Bit of a soggy finish to our 2018. Now, it looks like the bulk of the rain and the heavier rain will be early in the day. We do hold on to a chance for showers later. We may hear some thunder. We are headed up to the mid-upper 50s. Tonight, keep the clouds, overnight low 36. More clouds and sun New Year's Day, high 42 degrees. From the Weather Channel, I'm meteorologist Jeff Eno.
You're up to date with the latest weather forecast right here on the ESPN Radio Network.
This is Mike Golick for the best in local sports talk and play-by-play. It's SEMO ESPN.
This is Southeast Missouri's ESPN Radio Sports Network. 1220 KGIR, Cape Girardeau, and 1470 KMAL, Malden.
It's the Red Hawks Coaches Show from Wings Etc. in Cape Girardeau. Hey, nice turnout. We got some of the gymnasts here. The gymnastics head coach, Ashley Lawson, is here as well. So good to have that. I heard they were on the show. We were at Florida State, and they had the entire gymnastics team here, apparently, Mike Rennick was saying. So they had a really good show. It probably smelled a lot better in here, right, that day than it does with a bunch of guys. So as you get ready for SIU Edwardsville, you go up there. They got a nice little building up there, the Vidal Bean Center. It's a cozy little basketball environment, don't you think?
Yeah, I think they built it the right way. It's not too big. So you got a little bit of an environment there, even if you don't have a great attendance. It's a really nice facility. They've got a break off there of like a practice court as well too. So I think it's a nice arena, and it's for us. I like it because we go there day of.
Yeah.
We don't worry about going there the night before. We can go through the back way where we don't end up going through St. Louis, so you're not concerned about traffic. So you can get there. It's like I always tell our guys, like AAU ball, like back in high school and things like that. Let's get on the bus. Let's go play a game. Let's hop on the bus and head back.
And that's one thing. You talk about like Creighton or some of these conferences and, they don't use charter because of how far away teams in their school are. You've got several schools that are just a hop and a skip. I mean, SIU Edwardsville is a couple of hours, same with Murray State and UT Martin. I mean, some of those trips are not bad trips.
Yeah, well, I tell you, the first time we went to UT Martin, we did go there the night before, and if anybody's never been there before, I mean, getting food, hotel, all those types of things, it was just like a stretch. And I was just like, hey, we're always going the day of on that deal right there. But it is convenient that you have 3 schools that you can just go the day of and head there and get right back.
I know you have been focused in on the non-conference opponents. I'm sure you keep an eye on what other schools in the league are doing. But I think most people coming into the season thought that the pecking order in any particular order in the OVC, Belmont, Murray, Austin Peay, and Jacksonville State. And so far, those look like the teams that have been the strongest so far.
Yeah, I know Jacksonville State struggled a little bit starting out, but they were also playing some really good competition, and they have a lot of new guys. But you knew that they would get back in as far as what they do, which is really defend you and play physical basketball and don't beat themselves. I haven't had a chance to keep up with Austin Peay as much, but I know they started to have some success there. They really scored the ball well in their last game. And then what Belmont and Murray State are doing, I mean, Murray State has a potential lottery pick on their team. And so what he's doing against, like, quality competition is really impressive. And then, like you said, Belmont already had a signature win beating UCLA. And I saw a little bit of their game against Purdue a couple days ago because I always have an interest in watching those Purdue play. And obviously they were playing Belmont. So those teams right there will always – Belmont and Murray State will always be a challenge because the tradition that they have, and so they're always going to have good players coming in there. And then I think is what happens behind those two teams a lot is usually the story from day to, year to year.
Now, when you say Murray State has a lottery pick, Ja Morant is his name. I don't know how many people watch the Scott Van Pelt Late Edition Sports Center. Anytime Murray plays, he has a Ja Morant segment, a whole segment on Ja Morant. But not that he wasn't good last year, Coach, because he was really good. But how much better he's gotten, and I understand, that he's the number one guy. He was not. Jonathan Stark was the number one guy last year. But how much better he's gotten from last year to this year and a potential lottery pick is really amazing.
Well, I think it's also a testament to, like, what type of person Ja Morant is, because I'm not certain that Ja Morant wasn't this good last year. I think Ja Morant was such a team player, and he knew that, hey, I can feed Jonathan Stark and make us really good, a good basketball team, that I think he kind of, like, curtailed his game a little bit to get the ball to Stark, and who was a really good forward they had as well, too, that was first team all OVC.
Yeah, Terrell
something. Yeah, Miller. Terrell Miller.
That was it.
And so I think what he did was, like, he sacrificed his individual game in order for those guys to be really good and kind of be the guys, how you all that pecking order, especially with those guys being seniors. So I give a lot of credit to him, because I'm not sure that he improved all that much. I think he was probably the same player last year, but now what he did was he sacrificed himself, which a lot of people aren't willing to do, so those guys could have success and they could have a really good team.
And I mean, he's done it against good teams. I think he had 38 against Alabama and like 28 against Auburn. I mean, that's a top 10 team.
Yeah, well, my former assistant is the assistant coach at Auburn. I talked to him, and he called me right after, and he says, like, Ja Morant? I said, yes. He said, problem.
Well, he looks really good. Not coming up this week, but, Murray, you're going to be playing Murray here before too long. But we do want to mention UT Martin, because they will be your first conference home game. That'll be Saturday. They got out of the gate a little bit slowly, but they have been a team that has been a team to be reckoned with in the OVC the last few years.
Yeah, UT Martin always presents a unique challenge because of the way they play defensively. They're going to play at 2-2-1 press, and they're going to go back to that matchup zone. And what you've got to do is you've got to figure out how can you exploit that matchup zone, because if you say in your zone offense is too stagnant, and then if you say in your man offense, sometimes you're cutting without a purpose. And then you don't want to have time. A lot of, like, you play Thursday, Saturday, so are you getting ready for the Thursday game or are you getting ready for the Saturday game? So when you play them on Saturday, it's really hard because all your prep work is going into that Thursday game. You only have one day of prep to get ready for that unique matchup zone. It's much better when you play them on that Thursday, because now you can spend Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday getting ready for that Thursday game. So we've got to make a decision once we come to that Saturday, and I've been thinking about this. What are we going to do to make things simple for our guys? Hey, I know that we can do this and change this and tweak that, but are our guys going to be able to handle that much information within 24 hours? And I think that's being unfair to your players. So we've got to do things in our offense and tell them what we're looking for in our offense without changing it.
It's very similar because Samford University used to be in the OVC for like 10 minutes. Them and Jacksonville State joined the same time. And back then, Jimmy Tillett was the head coach, and they ran Princeton.
Yeah.
And if you had Thursday Jacksonville and Saturday Samford, I mean, you're preparing for a style of ball that nobody plays.
Yeah. Well, and the answer to that was always zone.
Yeah.
When you play a team that are you getting ready, like we played when I was at Purdue, Northwestern ran the Princeton offense, commodity, and it was really hard to prepare for. And we didn't play any zone at Purdue, never played any zone. But I was like, when you come up against a team like that, sometimes it's like, yep, we're playing zone.
Going to play some zone defense. All right, so in your mind, going to SIU Edwardsville, keys to going on the road and getting this win on Thursday night?
Well, the key for us is our defense has to travel. So it's got to be a situation. If you want to have a chance to win on the road, your defense has to travel. So we've got to be really good defensively. The next thing is offensively, we've got to give our defense a chance to be good. And what I mean by that is we can't turn the ball over, and we can't have empty possessions. So if we're getting a quality shot attempt every single time, then that does nothing but help our defense. So we're elite defensively right now. Our offense has got to continue to give our defense a chance to be elite. So you know, we want quality shot attempts, no empty possessions every single time.
7:45 will be the tip-off in Edwardsville at the Vidala Bean Center on Thursday as the Red Hawks start conference play. We'll see you then, Coach. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
That is Coach Rick Ray, and that is going to do it for the Red Hawks Coaches Show. We hope everybody has a wonderful and safe New Year's Eve, and Happy New Year. We will get you back into ESPN Radio, and we will join you again next Monday from Wings Etc. for the Red Hawks Coaches Show. So long.